Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins, and I'd like you to help me welcome my guest today, René Jovel, to the show. René is the Deputy General Counsel and Director of Legal Operations at Goodwill Industries of Southeastern, Wisconsin, a role he's held since August 2017. He's deeply committed to fostering inclusive workplaces and ensure legal compliance supports Goodwill's mission of helping individuals find employment despite barriers. René serves on the selection committee for the Milwaukee Awards for Neighborhood Development and is a board member of both the Wisconsin chapter of the Association of Corporate Counsel and CORE El Centro, a nonprofit offering affordable wellness services in both Spanish and English. In recognition for his work, René was named a top corporate counsel by Milwaukee Business Journal in 2022 and was selected as one of Milwaukee's 36 most influential Latino leaders of 2024. He continues to be an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, drawing on his experience as a first-generation Latino lawyer to support and uplift underrepresented communities. I'm excited to have you here, René. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
All right.
Much appreciated.
Of course. Hey, tell us how you got started. I mean, it's super impressive, the things that you've done and how you've been recognized for your work. Tell us a bit about how you got started.
Yeah, no, again, appreciate you having me and very excited to talk to you. So it's kind of a bit of a long process or journey, I should say. I'd have to take you back to when my parents came here, but I'll try to breeze through it as best as I can. So my parents came here in the 80s from El Salvador during the Civil War. They came here, moved here, and when they were here originally in LA, as they tried to figure out the immigration process, they couldn't really find any Spanish-speaking attorneys, couldn't really find anyone, and they went to someone who they thought was an attorney. My parents were not together at the time, but they each sort of had a similar story. Went to someone who they thought was an attorney, actually was a scam. So they put a lot of money into it, and then there was no benefit from it. So they were in limbo. President Reagan passed amnesty, and because of that, they were able to eventually get legal permanent status in the country. As I tell my students when they ask me why I went to law school, I always say you don't need like a hero origin story to go to law school. But for me, that's always been in the back of my mind growing up. There weren't, we talk about representation matters, and for them that was very literal, right? They couldn't find someone that spoke their language. They couldn't find someone who they thought was there to help them. So for me, that's always been there. So that took me to undergrad. So I went to Northwestern for undergrad, and in between there and thinking about law school, I was trying to figure out, well, do I want to go to law school? I do, but I also want to figure out what this stuff is. So I went and worked for an immigration law firm in Chicago. Enjoyed my time there, solidified why I wanted to do the work that I wanted to do, and then went to Marquette Law School out in Milwaukee. And during my time there, again, I was trying to figure out what can I do to help scenario. So I clerked at a local hospital in their legal department. I did some work at the public defender's office. And then right before I graduated, I ended up working for Senator Tammy Baldwin, a U.S. Senator out here in Wisconsin, mainly doing Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State work. A lot of, if you've ever watched Trapped Abroad on National Geographic, that's kind of the bit of the work that I was doing. And I was doing work for her for around 3.5 years, but really wanted to continue using my law degree for help, because I wanted to help. So between then, this job opened up at Goodwill, and Goodwill has sort of always been there, even when I was growing up, and we didn't have much growing up. That's where I would get my clothes. That's where family members would go and get assistance to just find work. So it seems perfect for me to continue this journey of trying to help. And that's how I landed at Goodwill, and I've been there 7 years this past August, and it's been fantastic. It's been an absolute wild ride. No day is the same, but that's the very short version of how I got here.
Well, it's very interesting. I know that we've talked to other attorneys about, when they niche down, what made them decide to do that. And it seems interesting that you went from immigration to clerking, all these different positions, and then you found a corporation that held all the values that you were looking for. So instead of hanging out your own shield, you're enough counsel now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those where in-house work is, you hear a little bit about it in law school for sure, and I'm thankful that I was able to do a clerkship at a hospital, because that was my first taste of in-house work, where I was able to see the variety of work that I could do and the variety of ways that I could help while working for a company. Just ended up happening that I ended up working for a place like Goodwill, and it just fit perfectly.
Wow. And that allows you to also teach.
Yeah. Fortunately, we're at Goodwill, we're all about work-life balance, and life can also be more work. In this instance, being a teacher, and one of the things that I enjoyed when I was at Senator Baldwin's was every quarter I would get a new batch of interns,
Oh,
and I really enjoyed the batch of interns that I got. I didn't want them to be you're just making copies, or you're just answering phones. I wanted them to leave with something, and I always try to find a way to teach them, and that was sort of my first taste at teaching something to someone. And from that, I said, well, I don't consider myself a teaching expert by any means, but there's some stuff that I could do here to try and help and hopefully influence or teach the new generation of professionals, whether it's at the undergrad or the law school. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to teach both at the law school. I've done contract drafting, and then at the Marquette undergrad to teach international law and then legal writing and analysis. Two completely different types of courses, but I think very, very important for where we are in today's landscape.
very cool. And it is interesting having a new batch of interns every quarter. So it was just you constantly had new things or new people to work with.
Do you ever feel like the end of the year is racing towards you and you're not quite where you want to be revenue-wise? With only a few months left, the pressure to make significant strides can be overwhelming. I get it. Balancing growth, managing a team, and chasing those big goals can leave you feeling stuck or unsure. It's a common struggle, and you don't have to navigate it alone. That's why I'm offering a free strategy call. Together, we'll identify the specific hurdles you're facing and develop a personalized marketing plan to drive real results. This is your opportunity to turn those challenges into achievements and set yourself up for a powerful year end. Picture this. December arrives and you look back on a year where you achieved more than you thought possible. How would that make you feel? This call is your chance to make that vision a reality. Don't let another day pass by without taking action. Nothing changes until you change it. Are you ready to see what's possible? Click the link in the show notes to book your free discovery call with me now. Let's work together to make these last few months your most impactful yet. Let's seize this opportunity and finish the year strong. I'm here to help you make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, we would occasionally have a few of them that stuck around, but if they remained with us, they would go to a different person in the office so that they could get a variety of different things. Because the way our office broke it up is we broke up our work by different departments or different federal agencies. So for me, yeah, every 3 to 4 months, I would get someone new and they all came with a variety of experiences. I remember I had to teach someone what a fax machine was because they had never heard or didn't even know what a fax machine was. So it was the gamut of what I was teaching was very wide.
Wow, that is, well, I guess this generation doesn't know about fax machines, and most of us wish we didn't.
Not wrong,
I mean,
not wrong.
yeah. So, well, that's excellent. So let's talk about you being the first generation professional experience. That's exciting. And I mean, I'm sure your mom is incredibly proud of that.
Yeah, no, I think so. It's been a wild ride. I like to think that I am working, living, doing some version of the American dream, right? That we hear about. My parents came here because there was a war in their home country and try to figure things out that were, here in the States. And for me, it's I continue to be the first of something, but hopefully not the last of something. That's what I like to say. First high school grad, first college grad, and then first attorney and first homeowner. I would also say, so it's hopefully the first and not the last. And for me, it's what I find interesting too is for my students, when I talk about being a first generation professional, it's interesting that there are a lot of first generation professionals that it's like a Venn diagram, right? For me, I'm a first generation professional because I'm a son of immigrants, but we have first generation professionals and kids that I teach and that have gone to law school where they've always, their family has been here. They just have never had anyone that's had the opportunity to go to either high school or college or even or get a law degree or a doctor or anything like that. So I enjoy being able to find that common ground with them and be able to chat with them as a first generation professional with what I learned and what they're going through, because we experience very similar things, but also very, very different things. And it's fascinating to me.
It's always interesting to compare notes, right? I mean, that's kind of what I feel like here is attorneys like to hear other people's stories, where you came from and that sort of thing. And the other thing that you pointed out to me and I wanted to touch on and see if you could elaborate on it is staying true to yourself, so that, that can give you strength and personal and professional. So can you elaborate on how you felt you did that as, your career so far?
Yeah, I always like to, everyone says, remember your roots, remember where you came from. But I think that also extends to remember who you are. Because for me, both at Senator Baldwin's and even at the work here that I do here, it can be very stressful, right? And it can be, like, I'm sure all law jobs are, right? Or any job out there, right? I'm blessed that I'm not, when I say stressful, I'm not a first responder, right? Or armed forces or anything like that. So I'm very blessed in that sense. But it can be stressful. So it's sometimes when you get a few seconds to breathe or a few seconds to just pause, it's good to sort of have an anchor there. And for me, it's trying to continue being my own person and continue having my own personality in a profession that, for lack of a better term, sometimes feels a bit stuffy, right? When you're an attorney, it can feel a bit stuffy. So, I have a Day of the Dead tie on right now. I like wearing, I one of my guilty pleasures is lucha libre and professional wrestling. And if I can wear a dress shirt or a tie with something like that, I'll do it. Cause it's, again, sometimes if I'm, with my head down doing work and I can take a look at my shirt or my tie, it'll bring me some joy. And I think it'll do it to someone else as well. And I try to do that with my shoes, with my pins, with my ribbons if I go to a conference, because I think when I think about that whole representation matters thing, sometimes it's not even just I happen to be a Latino first professional. It can be anything else, right? It can be shoes, it can be a shirt, it can be wrestling, it can be a baseball team, it can be a variety of things. And that's how I try to be true to myself in that sense, but also I try to make sure that I do something with intentionality and that I'm not just sort of along for the ride. So if I'm in a meeting or if we're having heavy, intense discussions at work, whether you like it or not, I'm going to make my voice heard because I'm here to do something, right? There's got to be a purpose. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to be here. And obviously listen to what folks bring, but I try to be myself in in whatever way I can, whether it's by what I bring to a meeting with what I say or with what I'm wearing.
I love it. I love it. There's always the guy with the crazy ties or crazy socks, right?
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
makes you memorable whenever you go to meetings or conferences and that sort of thing.
yeah. No, it does. And I try to I've been on this mental health journey for the last few years of trying to figure out what that is, right? And one of those is social anxiety, which a ton of people end up having. And one of the things that with my therapist and I, where we were trying to figure out how to go about social anxiety, because I'm fine with the conversation once it gets going, but it's that beginning part, right? That's always a bit tricky. And my therapist, one day I was in there and she's like, well, you have very colorful shoes on. Like, why don't you just make that your sort of unofficial icebreaker? Because people are going to notice that. And then you have something. And that's,
Yeah, I love that.
once I found that, the click was excellent. It's made it a ton way, way easier to interact
and
with
the
folks.
ties. I think you're right. I mean, it's the entering that. Like I used to do a lot of Chamber of Commerce meetings, and those when you first join a chamber, before you get to know everybody, it's always just that stressful walking into the meeting, whether it's a breakfast or a social or something like that. It's always tough. I love the idea about the shoes or the tie, using that as an icebreaker. Great
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Yeah, try to it makes it something easy. And then I see it on someone else, right? If I see someone with nice shoes or nice dress, purse, bag, whatever it is, right? I can say, well, I have something and you have something. I think we have at least a very easy 3-minute icebreaker here that we can go into.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's talk about the awards the neighborhood awards. Tell us a bit about that. I mean, that sounds kind of interesting.
The Mandy's, yeah. So the neighborhood awards are really, really cool. So it's this organization here in Milwaukee where Milwaukee is made up of a variety of different neighborhoods, like I'm sure a lot of other cities in the US are. But what we try to do is we try to find organizations that have either been around a while or are just starting out and need the recognition, but not just deserve recognition. So what we do is we we put out a call and there are a variety of different categories. So they can be either from an innovative use of public space to an innovative arts program to a single person that is doing something in their community that needs to be recognized. So we get hundreds of applications. They are then reduced down to around 5 or 6. We get them all in writing or a video, and then we review them, and then we go out. And it's my favorite part. We then go and interact with these individuals and see the projects live and see what's going on. And what I love about these is that at the end of the process, we have a large awards ceremony. And obviously the winner gets the award and the larger video package, but we also make sure that we talk about all of the projects that are there, because some of these projects are just getting started and they just haven't been around long enough or aren't potentially sophisticated enough yet and are still figuring out some of the growing pains to get to a point where they can be a winner, but we want people to know about them so that they use them. An example of this is, last year, and I mean, it's been every year, but last year there were a lot of fires, right? Forest fires, both out west, but also in Canada. And the winds were brutal coming into to Wisconsin. Everyone saw the images out of Chicago. If it's happening in Chicago, it's probably happening in Milwaukee, right? So the sun would come, you couldn't see it behind this giant haze. And there was this gentleman who had just started, and he had gone around by himself to different both weather stations being used by news agencies, but also just amateur weather enthusiasts in Milwaukee, and was trying to build a air health quality index that you could open it up, go on your app so that you could see. And this nomination had come in well before the fires had even occurred. And he just had a lot of growing pains. But because he had been nominated and we had talked about this award, all of a sudden he has a bunch of other folks that want to help him because now it's very topical. So it's an awesome way for me to get out and talk to the community, but also see the people that that are doing great work. And then you also get to spread the news of these awesome organizations out there that are doing great work in the city.
Wow, that's
So I
great.
love it.
That sounds great. It's very interesting that, our first conversation was about, the first generation professional, but it sounds like you, from a child, you wanted to help people.
Yeah.
You knew the struggle that your parents went through. And it seems like with all the things, you've got irons in a lot of fires, that you are helping people on many different levels and many different areas.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about the people listening to this podcast, what would be the one important thing you want them to take away from this episode?
I think that for me, it's help doesn't have to be, well, help can be a variety of things, right? And help doesn't have to be this giant monumental thing that you have to do, right? Sometimes what I hear, either from talking to community members or even my students, they feel like they are just one person and they can't do anything because they can't donate or they don't have the time or anything. But start small. The smallest thing is going to go the longest way. And I think that's the biggest thing. And there are a variety of organizations and a variety of people that need assistance and that need help, right? Whether it's you volunteer for a few hours at a food shelter, or you go through your own pantry and you see a few cans and you take that right on your way to work or something. The smallest thing can go a long way. And what's great, and I always say this, if you want to think about it selfishly, I have never felt bad after helping. I have always felt better. So if you need something that is for you, right, and that's going to get you over that hump, providing help is always fantastic. It always helps. And we live in a day and age now where you can go on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and you can find, local orgs that are looking for help, right? That need volunteers.
Exactly. I mean, through your Chamber of Commerce, your local BNI, your network, you can find someone. I agree.
Absolutely.
At the end, you've got your network, you've got your associations you're helping with, the volunteer stuff you're doing, and people do business good people do business with good people. You help other people, it all comes back around, but it is that outlet of being able to give back and feel good about it.
Absolutely. And I love learning. You always learn stuff, and then you can use some of that, right? It always feels fantastic.
That's great.
Always.
This has been very interesting. I loved hearing your journey and what you're doing now and how you're helping so many people. I hope you continue to do all of those great things, and then helping, of course, with the diversity and what you do with Goodwill. If any of our listeners wanted to follow up with you, connect with you, how would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, honestly, I think the best way is via my LinkedIn. I use that thing a ton. You may want to mute your notifications if you follow me, because I'm usually posting something, or my wife will tell me that I pop up on her news feed because I'm just liking and commenting on stuff. So LinkedIn, if you're shooting a message in LinkedIn, I'm going to read it. Okay. So I'll definitely read it. So LinkedIn absolutely is the way to go.
Perfect. I'll make sure that we have that in the show notes. So this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed learning about you and about your story. And I hope people will reach out to you and chat with you about what you've got going on, and take a leaf out of your book and help people.
Thank you. No, absolutely. I thank you so much for having me. If your listeners have any questions about first gens, helping, where to find cool t-shirts, cool shoes, whatever y'all need, let me know. Absolutely happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Welcome to the Leadership in Law Podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law Podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.